to the Travel Winds podcast. Today my guest is Jessica McClain, a TV news reporter, host, anchor, kind of a catch-all. How are you today, Jessica?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on the show. It's good to see you.
I appreciate the time. It's going to be a fun one. I've never talked to a news anchor reporter. I just see the pretty face on TV and go, I wonder how they got that job.
Right? What actually do they do besides reading off a teleprompter?
It's so easy. You know, it's the overnight success story, of course, right? No?
Not necessarily. Not so quick about that one. It's actually a lot of work, more work than people would naturally assume.
Sure.
You know, in the era of digital media, we've become so highly advanced, and most news stations really want you to be well diverse and be able to write, edit, put stories together, be a photog, kind of what we call a one-man band. MMJ is what they call it.
Yeah. So you worked in Los Angeles. You've worked in Colorado Springs. Is there a huge difference in the different markets, and how does that work out, like reporting in different markets?
Sure. Well, the markets go from 1 to 100. So in television broadcast news, and those markets are defined all across the country from what you have: a small market, a starter market, let's say Idaho Falls, or you could have Fargo or North Dakota, which would be dreadful. I don't recommend anybody to start off there. It's very cold. And then you have your middle market and you'll have your top market. So pretty much you kind of pay your dues like any other business. You start off in a small market. Maybe it's your first job out of college. You go there, you get a couple of years, 2 or 3 years experience. And then your idea is to move up to a middle market. And depending on what your career goals are, you can move up to a larger market, let's say like Chicago, Dallas, Orlando, LA, New York, that sort of thing.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, so it's interesting dynamic. On air is 20% of the job. You know, I've had several people ask me over the years, "Oh, well, you just get to work and you read off a teleprompter." I said, "Oh no. I wish that would be the easy way to put out the day." Yeah. So 80% of your job is editing your stories, packaging them. You set up interviews. You're responsible for transcribing those interviews and all the what we call sound bites. So if I set up an interview with somebody, I'm responsible for putting that whole package together. So primarily 80% of your job is editing and transcribing interviews, setting up interviews, reading through press releases, setting up meetings with legislative policymakers, whether that be in the community or state leaders. So you're quite busy. I mean, it's definitely not sit in the studio and look pretty all day. That's not what the job entails.
Well, then I'm out.
Right? Oh, darn.
If I can't just sit somewhere and look pretty all day, then I'm done.
Yeah, count me out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think it's cool, like, because I'm reaching out to multiple people, and now I understand a little bit. Like, I can only imagine, like, a celebrity or a politician, you get could be up to hundreds of requests a day. So, you know, it's got to be kind of, you know, I don't know. Is it frustrating for you to have like this storyline and you're like, man, I need to have this interview, and then they're like, well, we'll talk to you next week or the week after? Or does that happen at your level too?
Sure. There's a dynamic of that. So how it usually is structured is we receive press releases at news stations. So as those press releases come through, we kind of filter through all of them and decide what's urgent, what's now, what's next, what's coming up. So the sense of breaking news is always the strongest leading element, which most news stations feed off of. That's what they want. They want urgent right now, what's breaking, and then every story trending after that kind of trickles down. So it's up to us as journalists and reporters to be able to dive into that dynamic and understand what do we need to get out to the public immediately right away. I mean, it could be maybe a family of 4 sadly has been found dead, and we're not sure how. Were they murdered? Was it a home invasion? Was it a fire? So those sort of elements to a story, you want to make sure you have the facts and the dynamics there and truthfully reported on as well, because that's a very, very vital, important part of information that we need to relay to the public and the community. So your days differ depending on what stories come in, and you have dayside reporters, you have nightside reporters, you have evening anchors, you have morning anchors. And if you are a morning anchor, your day starts at 2:30. 3 a.m. Evening anchors usually start around 2:30, 2:45, and they wrap up about 10:30, depending on your last evening newscast. And then you're homeward bound after that. But a lot of editing, a lot of writing, putting video packages together, transcribing sound bites, and you are responsible for pretty much putting that story together.
Yeah.
There are producers and editors to help you with that stuff, but in the present day and age, they really want to make sure that you are the jack of all trades and that you are capable fully of getting everything done.
Keeps their costs down and keeps the revenues up for them.
Yeah, yes, it is. And many people have this notion that news anchors get paid a lot of money. That is not the case.
Well, you're all millionaires, I know.
Yeah, no, I have a hidden stash in my crypto, right? Not really.
Hey.
Which most people should be investing in. But for starter markets, you could make anywheres from $25,000 to $35,000. That would be your first job out of college. Middle market levels, where I'm at currently, Colorado Springs, and there's a list. There's a Nelson Media Market list that will narrow those down from the number one market to 100. You can make anywhere from 40 to 50,000, and then when you jump to a top 20 market, you're talking anywhere from doubling your salary as a reporter from 80 to 95,000, and then you can go all the way up into 200,000 for a primetime evening news anchor, and that's on a local level. So local news networks are all owned by different media stations, media groups. So, and then you have your cable news outlets, which cable makes triple what local news does because they have a higher budget, they have better advertising, and that's kind of how that platform goes.
See, that's crazy to me.
So yeah, the funny thing is I said to someone the other day, I go, McDonald's pays $20 an hour, but news anchors, news reporters in small markets are making $15 to $17 an hour.
That's literally what I was just going to say to you. I'm like, you could all the signs I see is, starting at Walmart or wherever, it's $15 to $17 an hour.
Yeah.
Or you can be on TV. It's like, what?
A lot of people have this misconception. Oh, you're on TV, you're on air. It's this glamorous job. No. You get in, you're responsible for writing your stories, putting them together, doing your own hair and makeup, being on time, being mic'd up, ready to go, and then you're back at your desk. Sometimes you could be out shooting a story as a reporter, and maybe there's no photog available on the schedule that day. So you have to pack it up. You have to set up the tripod. You have to do all the gear and all the equipment yourself and be able to run that live shot significantly without any help and be able to do it in a timely manner. So live shots, we have a pack that the photog usually brings out with him, and that's hooked up, that will live stream back to the station. So if you're ever watching a reporter and they're live in the field and there's a couple of seconds of a beat that there's that delayed reaction, that's because it's streaming live back to the station. So once they set that up, we don't have teleprompts out on location, so we don't do that. You'll basically write what we call as an open. So that's telling the viewer what's coming up next on this story. You memorize that, you look at your phone, and then once that story starts and you're feeding that package, then you can go through other material and continue putting together that live shot. So
that's what I need for my show. Coming up next.
Yeah, I know, it'd be great, right? You can segue into your next guest.
Jessa McClain.
But it's, there's fun. It's a lot of, you see a side to community and people that you're not normally exposed to. I mean, I did a story last fall on a couple. They both had COVID, and it was really interesting. Sadly, her husband died. I personally get connected with the stories because I put authenticity, relatability, and passion into my stories. A lot of times reporters, you kind of have to not get emotionally attached to every story you do, but as human beings, that's what communities look for. Who can I trust? Who can I rely on? Who actually puts caring and heart into their work and what they do? And as someone that works in the public eye, that's really valuable. And it's important to know that you actually care about what you're doing and for the better of the community. There's just so much doom and gloom, as you know, in the media and the news. And I understand, I work in this business, but I mentioned that several times to previous news directors I work with. People are really tired of hearing about murders, fires, shootings, and rapes. And now, of course, we have mass shootings everywhere, every day, every week. And so there is a part of your job where it's very stressful, but you learn to know that's part of the job. There's deadlines, there'll be stressful situations, and you have to be able to think fast on your feet and jump into the situation and transition into those stories with ease and not be freaked out, not a deer in headlights. Things happen and you have to roll with those punches. News is a very competitive business. So the pay is low because the demand So
Yeah.
the supply is plentiful.
Sure.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people want to work in the news field. So, for example, the job I currently, well, I should say previously was out here in Colorado Springs. I parted ways in February with the company, but there was roughly at the time I started last September, there were maybe 100 to 130 candidates for the position. So they'll narrow down and they'll narrow it down to about 6 or 7 candidates. They'll interview, and it's usually a 3 interview process. Most of the time, outside of COVID, they would fly you to the location, put you
Yeah.
up for to interview, bring you into the studio, put you at the desk, see how you read, write some stories, put things together. So it takes generally on average a month to 2 months to actually land and lock down a news reporter anchor position, unless something
And that's when they open
happens.
up.
Yeah, it's a long period of time.
Yeah.
The contracts go for a couple years, so depending on if you're married, if you're single, where your family is, what your career goals are, most of the on-air talent will stay in that market for 2 to 5 years, and then maybe they want to be in a top New York or LA market. Maybe they're happy where they're at locally in Dallas or Orlando. They're married, their kids go to school there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of contributing factors. Everyone has different goals. Some people straight out of college, but you get a nice diversity in the newsroom. So you'll have someone 21, it's their first journalist job, and they're
Yeah.
out there getting a story, and they're
Hustling. Yeah.
then you'll have, anyone 30 to 40, then you'll have 40 to 50. So I find that really valuable for the community, because if we turned on the news and everyone was 21 and looked like they walked off a runway, nobody
Yeah.
would take it seriously. So it's important as a news organization to make sure you have on-air people that all community
Well,
can
a wide
relate.
spectrum. Yeah.
Right. So, on the weekends, typically younger people don't get up at the crack of dawn. It's age ranges, maybe 50 to 65. So you're going to have the stay-at-home house mom that wants to watch the Saturday morning lifestyle show. You're going to have hard politics more early in the morning on the weekdays or the evening. So you're going to have evening news anchors that will tackle
Sure.
that. And we have reporters for various different stories and topics that will be sent out for those elements.
So I'm gonna ask you a weird question. See if you've
I
ever
love
been.
weird questions. It's good. Just throw it right at me.
Good looks typically help people. Do you ever think being as pretty as you are has hurt you when a news director? I don't know. Do they look at you and go, man, she looks too model looking, too beautiful to be in our market? Do you think that happens? I don't know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's an interesting question that
I don't
you
know if I
asked.
put it the right way, but
No, it's fine. It definitely is a curse and a blessing at the same time.
sure.
You come in, you feel like, you're the new dog on the block, right? So
Yeah.
there's an element of trust, respect, and building that camaraderie with people. But I always say at the end of the day, people either like you or they don't. And unfortunately, in this business, it's very cutthroat. There's a
Yeah.
lot of egos. There's a lot of entitlement. There's a lot of attitude, cattiness, what takes place inside the newsroom, outside of the passion of you loving to do your job and doing it well. It happens. It's happened to me. Yes, absolutely. So there's a dynamic where, and it predominantly with women. Men are much easier to work for.
I always say women
the nature
are
of the
way too
business.
catty.
I want to come to work. Everybody wants to work in a healthy environment.
Yeah.
People can handle stress. I can handle pressure and stress, but toxicity, that's a whole nother element. And there's a fine line between that. We've come to a time and place of everybody starts, we have Me Too, we have harassment, we have everyone's offended by things. So in a workplace, do you do your job well? Do you get along with people? Even if those elements are true, if somebody doesn't like you for whatever reason, they will find a way to push you out. And it's
Sure.
happened. Many, many people. If you're attractive, you're smart, you're engaging, and people want to be around you, they like you, you're funny, you're charming, the attention's no longer on that main evening news anchor, right? So who is this new woman coming into our station? I don't like her political views. I don't like her narrative. I want her out.
Yeah.
And it happens. And unfortunately, someone that's been there a lot longer will have more power and say in that.
Yep.
And the more that they hound the news director or the general manager, the more likely is that you're going to be canned and out of there. And it's just the way it is, and it shouldn't be, because it is discrimination. And they'll find ways to get rid of you. Yes.
I have the solution to your problem, Jess.
Yes, I love solutions.
You ready? We're gonna
Go.
get you to start doing your makeup like Tammy Faye Baker. It'll soften the beauty part,
Right?
and you'll get a little more sympathy and empathy from people. Like, oh, look at her. She could be so pretty, but
Hair. I need like a higher updo, right? Like that 80s, the old, remember the Bon Jovi videos where they had, the hair was so sprayed out to the side and standing up and out here, and they had the big hoop earrings, and
I do. I do remember those days.
No, it's a lot of fun. We do have fun in newsrooms too. I mean, you'll have Fridays some days. People bring pizza and they'll have soda. There might be outside get together work parties and that sort of thing. But you have to find the right team. That's the important thing. News has a lot of turnover, believe it or not. And I often wondered why that is such. If a newsroom has 20 or 30 people that come through within a 6-7 month time frame, that's a huge problem. That's a big red flag, especially as a potential employee coming into that news station or somebody that wants out. And there is, generally speaking, more turnover in news and media than there are in other career fields. However, as a community leader, it's very important. I think ratings is based on stories. The element of the story is how that's highlighted and how the community relates to that. So if you have a community that really looks to you in the public eye, and you constantly you want to build a rapport with them, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's not about the news anchor. It's not about the reporter. It's about the American people. It's about the community. What are we doing to help better the community? How are we that voice? How can we listen to them and be that voice to speak for them? And if they don't trust the news station, if they don't have that connection with our on-air people, it's really hard to have good ratings. And they turn the TV on. Well, who's that? That was Sally.
I don't know who that is.
She was here 2 months ago, and now it's Jennifer. And wasn't that Dan? Where'd Dan, the weather guy, go? And it happens.
True.
And that can be a detrimental factor to deciding, where do I want to go next? What market do I want to work in? I want to look at their track record as a station. Who do they have? And you want to meet the team, because you want to make sure that's your family away from family, and you
absolutely
to be able to get along and work together nicely. It's a high pressure job, but at the end of the day, you still want to like where you work. And people, it's like anything. I tell people, news is like sales. Sales
exactly
people
like
buy
it.
from who they like, they watch who they like, they want to be around who they like, and they're going to give the best interview to the person they like the most. That's how it works. It's very simple. There's no favors done in the news business. They might take a phone call, say, you mentioned earlier, previous to jumping on the show, if you have a producer that you worked with and left and went to another market. I actually worked with an amazing producer here at KKTV and in Colorado Springs, and he parted ways. He went to another station, and he said, absolutely, he'd put in a good word for me at that station. I can't go into specifics, obviously, for legality reasons, but a wonderful, amazing, incredible producer, did his job really well. He had worked at that station for 5 years. You can have a referral, but it's generally up to the general manager and the news director. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And they want to see your work, how quickly you can put things together, how you present on camera, your relatability, authenticity, all those factors weigh into it. And I remember one of the questions that was asked to me by a general manager. I was on my third and final interview round for a position, and the news director said, why should I hire you over other candidates that had 5 or 6 years experience? And I said, it's really simple. It comes down to people either like you or they don't. And sales is about relatability. I could go out and pitch and answer these questions and tell you why you should hire me. But at the end of the day, it's all about sales. You buy from who you like, you watch who you like, you repeat your business with who you like. And there's a factor of compassion and heart that I bring to the table in everything I do. And that's why you should hire me. It's really, people go, when they have these interviews, everyone gets nervous, job interviews, it's stressful, and they're sweating and they don't know what to say, but be yourself, because at the end of the day, people either like you again or they don't. And you're not going to change their mind. They've made their mind up in the first 30 seconds, generally, is the rule of thumb in news. They'll watch your newsreel. You have a resume.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
Capture in 30 seconds or less, flat out. And
But
that's
like you said earlier, and maybe it was before we recorded, it was, every market, like, it's the same way in my industry. It's like, if you're looking for a specific type of person, you might be great. You might be perfect if they were looking for the Caucasian brunette. But they might already have 4 Caucasian brunettes on their staff, and they're looking to make it a little bit different or change it up. And so that's why you don't get the job. It's not that you weren't good enough. It's just you didn't. I mean, everything's got to fall in line. That's what it sounds like.
You'd make a great news director. You're hired. No, you're absolutely right. So there's a variety of elements that are included in the hiring.
Was that a slam or a positive? I don't know. I can't decide. I'm thinking about it.
That'd be positive. You're already on this. You know how this works. So it's or they even might say, and this is true story happened, she's too pretty for our station. We need, and they're not going to say it because obviously we're walking on eggshells in today's day and age about being offended by everything. So they will simply respond to you, we've decided to go with another candidate, right? They'll never say you're not right for this position. They'll simply say we're going to go with another candidate. Thank you so much. So there is that dynamic that maybe in certain markets they want, and I hate to use that term, more homely looking, more average looking. Again, it goes, and it's not to be derogatory in any means, but again, it goes back to the relatability factor. So either they want a high, I mean, if you look at different anchors at major, cable news outlets, right?
Yeah.
Fox, CNN, you have a lot of these different news stations, NBC, ABC. So we see a variety of looks or a variety of personalities. So you kind of want to have a well-diverse group, especially when it comes to on-air teams that you're building. Because if everybody looked the same and had that same dynamic, then I think that would really tremendously hurt your ratings, and then your station would suffer.
Well, exactly. I mean, like you said, you're going to watch the news from people you like hearing from and trusting and believing. But if everyone's coming from the same physical attribute background, then if I don't like pretty brunettes, and if there's 5 pretty brunettes on the panel, I might not watch it or listen to it.
Right. And there's also another element. I mean, you have sports, you have weather, you have news. So if you hire someone into, let's say, the sports department, and they don't have a deep knowledge and understanding about how sports it works and runs, and dive deep into that, your rate will suffer tremendously. That's why I would never touch sports. I commend the sports team, the sports director, the sports anchors, reporters. They are brilliant. And, we watch ESPN and all the different news anchors and hosts talking, you got the playoffs, you got the Super Bowl. I give it to those guys. They're extremely talented, but they, generally speaking, they'll hire former NFL players over the years. Who better to run that and to be able to host the shows and navigate all the plays are former players in that particular field. So there's an element, it's different in a newsroom. You'll have meteorologists, which you have to have a meteorology degree. It's a whole nother element. Then you'll have your regular news and you'll have sports. So you want to find a good team that everybody fits well and they know their element, they know their content, and they can deliver that to the community, because it's that bond with the community. And if you don't develop that, it's really hard to stay at a station and understand the dynamics of how things work, because the ratings all come from the community, whether they, are the viewers there? Are they watching? Do they like who's, oh yeah, she's funny. She does this story every Friday. I love her watch. I had mentioned one time to a news director, I said, this is what we got to do on Friday, because we tackle hard news all week long. We're on all the breaking news stories. I'd like to end Friday with, let's create a little segment in one of our blocks, in the lower block. So in the news, we call it a newscast, stack a newscast from the most urgent story all the way down to the light, fluffy stories. So you never want to start out with, I'll use COVID or a mass shooting, and then you punch in little Fluffy was rescued by the fire department, because it doesn't go with the element of how the newscast is stacked. So I said, I think it would be something fun to try, if we did, let's say a D block or F block at the end of the newscast, punch it, make this about the viewers, turn it into viewers, write in your craziest, funniest story about how, Pickles can open the doorknob, or you trained Jinxie to go to the bathroom, or your dog spends every Saturday and helps volunteer for the elderly community with the disabled vets. Something really amazing. Have the viewer send in their video, and we can select one of those. Like, each person gets a highlighted story each week, and do that throughout the year. So in other words, the community has an element to highlight. What are they doing to giving back to others within the community? Do a fun story so people can shut the news off and feel happy. Oh, this was great. I like that. And it
How'd
breaks
that go over?
It breaks up that monotony of such serious news all the time.
I totally agree. And the reason I don't watch the news is I don't need that much negativity in my life. I know people are dying every day. I mean, and I'll hear about the big stories through my phone.
Right.
But I don't need to know that, there was another plane crash or another not mass shooting, because that's the stuff I'll hear online.
Right.
On my phone. But like, throw me something good. Like, God,
well,
there's people out there doing good things every day.
And highlight those. And I mentioned that multiple times.
That's why I asked how to go over.
Not so well. So I said to my news director and my digital content manager, I go, I'm letting you know, you could go out and ask 20 people off the street, what do you want to see more of, and what are you tired of seeing on the news?
Yeah.
Because it's always about murders, fires, shootings, rapes, doom and gloom. And people are fed up with that. Yes, you're breaking news. Yes, you have to have urgent stories out there. But I said, case in point, why are we not highlighting, and I'm currently living in the state of Colorado, the entire state of Colorado does not have specified rent control, whereas in California they do. So those are the elements and those are the topics that you want to dive into that I feel are extremely valuable to communities and
that's
cities.
Not fluffy though. That's a
no,
legit
it's
news story.
Good, but it's not a doom and gloom. It's a very valuable story to cover. Yeah. With the inflation we've seen at the highest in over 2 decades currently, those types of important issues matter to community. Yeah, your rent's $1,200 one year. Why is it jacked up to $200 the next year? What can we dive into as reporters and anchors and understand why this is happening? Who do we talk to in legislative policymakers to be able to switch those and take action? Policy plans, your car insurance rates, all of these, per state are the stories. Infrastructure, I said a couple times, in Colorado, DIA is one of the most inconvenient airports. It's way out in the middle of nowhere. People wonder if they're in Kansas when they arrive, And so I said, the infrastructure here is pretty poor, generally speaking. You don't have any trains that'll take you, let's say, people come from all over the world. We have the most well-renowned ski resorts here in the world. Vail, you have Aspen, Breckenridge, as you know, multiple resorts. So I said, you need to have a train system structurized that takes people from DIA to downtown Denver. If they're staying there, they can leave their cars there. And if they want to get to the mountains, what if they come from, I don't know, Germany? They've never driven in the snow. They don't have any familiarity with Colorado. Those people can hop on a train. Trains will stop at various resorts in the mountains, drop them off. If you're an employee and you can't afford to live in the mountains, you can live in Denver, hop in the train, work on the train, go to work, come back. It would decrease traffic by 50%, up our hospitality and tourism by 50%, and it would increase jobs for people by 50%. So
we don't want
that dynamic's never been touched in 25 years, governor after governor, mayor after mayor. And so those stories I really believe viewers want to see and they want to know. And that's not doom and gloom. That affects every single one of us in each city, depending on what your infrastructure system is. So I put a lot of concern and compassion into the things that I do, because I feel those elements are important. And there's also a dynamic to have fun. And I said, why don't we add in like an anchor blooper or a reporter blooper? People love comedy. And there's no better way than to lighten it up, throw it in there. It's not going to hurt anything, but a lot of times everybody has to stick by the books because everyone's afraid that, what's going to happen to our ratings after that? What's the GM what's the corporate executive going to say? People want humor. They love to know that anchors and reporters are relatable and they can sit back and have a few giggles, and do something funny. And obviously, the whole newscast can't be centered around that. But the dynamic of realism, relatability, fun, with an element of compassion and urgency, those are really valuable traits as an on-air talent to bring that, because it's not an easy job. It's fun, but it's stressful. But you have to have that diversity of dynamics in order to really captivate viewers.
There was a show, I think, I'm trying to remember, I think it was called Good Morning LA. It was Regis Philbin, Jillian Barberie, and oh my God,
I think I know what you're talking about. Wasn't it a group? Wasn't it a kind of similar to Fox and Friends, but it was 3 or 4 people on the.
It was 3. Show. It was 2 girls and Regis. God, Dorothy. Oh my God. Anyways, they were fun to watch because Jillian Barberie, who was a pretty girl, obviously, was a goofball and a sports athlete, but they had fun. And
yeah.
That show ran for 10 years, 12, 15 years. I don't know, long time.
They had a good run.
Yeah, but they had fun at their job. Like they didn't take themselves too seriously. Like Regis Philbin was kind of the straight man, and then Jillian and I kind of want to say it was Dorothy, but
no, but it's important. You're right. You have to have that sense of realism.
There's no show like that. You have The View. And I don't want to pick on.
Oh, The View is horrid. I can't. I have to. I said, any way I can scratch that from my entire cable plan, because I can't watch that. It's just a bunch of people arguing, and it's just a lot of negativity. And I don't want that. You need a fun show that has a little bit of element of, tapping into some serious things, but you also want to have personality and you want to have laughter. And that's definitely much more of a lifestyle type of show driven than hard news. So, but with that said, it's also important on local news to have a fun morning lifestyle show, to have maybe an early evening type of, community lifestyle people. That's relatable. And
so
if
how do we get that set up, Jess?
I mean, I would love that. I should be doing my own podcast too. I know a couple of people have mentioned that, and
I'm one of them.
You're the pro at podcasts.
Oh yeah.
And you've had quite a few incredible guests too, I've seen. So it's community is about people, and American people, they want success, they want drive, they want solutions, they want opportunities, they want happy, and they want to know that they can trust you if you're delivering the news. It's not always about how much doom and gloom can I watch every night.
Well, when I see podcasters like Joe Rogan, who has a bigger audience than CNN, following. Fox, MSN, he has a bigger following than any of them, and none of his stuff is inherently doom and gloom. He's asking questions and trying to find out things. That's how I perceive him.
Oh, 100%. And he's raw. He's straight to the point. He's blunt. He's direct. He doesn't have any definitive regulations that he has to abide by.
Correct. So.
And then people wonder. So it's interesting as an on-air talent, you tell news directors and GMs, okay, I'm letting you know which is the most highly rated news podcast, which cable news outlet is the highest #1 ranked, and here's why. So how do we change those dynamics around?
How do we get some of that?
And Joe Rogan, it's great, whether you like him or you don't like him, or whatever political party line you fall on. That's a fact. The logic and reason is what drives people, and the relatability. Again, knowing that they're getting truth, raw, real, right now, rather than having to do everything by a principled measure.
Well, I like the idea. Like he's not a Republican, and he's not right wing, he's not a conservative.
Yeah.
But that's how he's now perceived. But I mean, he's really not. He's never said.
He's never come out and say, "I am a registered Republican," or "I'm a Democrat."
He's a free thinker. That's how, I mean, and but I sit there and go, man, if I'm CNN, and I'm not a news director, but if I'm CNN and I'm one of those, and I'm like, okay, the most popular guy right now with the most views, and the most impressions, isn't what we're putting out. So why don't we try to be more like that? But yet they don't do that. They go the opposite.
I don't get it. On air, you can suggest options and ideas to the executive, but a lot of the times they're not going to try it. People are in their comfort zone. They're afraid of ratings dropping really rapidly. Sure. And I always come into it and I say, well, trying something different, taking that risk putting that element and that factor into the show and changing the dynamic, you can't live off fear. You have to try something different, because what we're doing now is not
Not
working.
working.
And communities and people want to see something different. I prefer conversational interviews. You have traditional reporting where you get up, you get out there, you write your open, you stand out there and you introduce the story, today live reporting here, back at you, da 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 da. And it's just so mundane. You
Yeah.
have to stick to that structure. But if you have interviews that are, you sit down, granted, we don't have a lot of time and it's not 60 minutes and it's not 2020, but when there's that element of compassion, you sit down, you talk to somebody, you have like we're doing very conversational
Yeah.
pieces. People relate to that a lot better because it's genuine, it's real, and it's just very simple. There's no pre-planned methodical way of doing it.
Yeah. So I've interviewed over 200 people now. Yeah, I think you'll be like 206, 207, something like that. I've had several people that are used to being interviewed say they like the long formats because they actually get out. It's not just the 30-second quick hit. Hey, I'm going to be on, you know, KWDDV in Denver, whatever, for 30 seconds talking about how I'm going to be there. They want to get out their stories, and that's why Joe Rogan's. I mean, he has 3-hour shows.
Mhm.
I mean, you're lucky to get 45 seconds on a news program, and he's interviewing a guy for 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Well,
And
and Ben Shapiro does the same thing. He's
yeah,
one of the other highly rated podcast hosts. It's just such a fascinating dynamic of why executives and corporate leaders at these news stations and media companies
wow,
don't see this and say, okay,
let's go after
let's
that.
try, let's try it for the first quarter and see how ratings go. Let's just get out there. Let's do some more conversational pieces,
Yeah.
because you just never know. I mean, we live in such a fear-driven,
See, that's where
mentality.
I think I'm gonna cut you off because I
Yeah,
think
yeah, cut me off.
that's where I think you would be successful in the longer formats because you are a conversationalist. You yap really well, as I like to say.
Yeah, as my speech professor in college, I'll never forget that. So I said to her, "How do you flunk speech class?" I remember there was a couple kids this years ago. How do you flunk it? It's the easiest class in college, And but when you dive into it more, public speaking is the number one feared thing for
Yeah.
many people. And there's a time limit. And of course, I would always go past the time limit, 7 minutes per speech. So I definitely don't have a problem in that arena. But thank you, I appreciate the compliment. It's
Yeah.
conversational and getting directly to the facts without having to follow a specific curriculum. People like it, and the ratings are through the roof. All these podcast
Yeah.
hosts. It's unbelievable how the dynamic of, we used to go from the day, and that was before my time, where they had cassette tapes. So every news show, every newscast was archived onto tapes, VHS tapes. So now we live in a world of digital media. We think about this. 12 years ago, 13 years ago, we didn't have social media.
Yeah.
So we've taken a leap of faith and risk, and it's a globally successful entity that society has just devoured. So there's so many platforms that we can put our information, our content out there. And yes, 100% conversational pieces do well, because
Yeah.
you get, and then you start to have panels. You can bring in different people to weigh in their views and how they feel. And that's important. I think the more people we bring into the shows from the community and highlight, let's, bring in elements that, I know we don't want to talk about doom and gloom, but mass school
Yeah.
shootings, this stuff's never going to stop. But what about, instead of just the reporter or the anchor doing a story, bringing in more conversational pieces with
Real people.
real people, everyday people that have been impacted. What do you feel safe as a community? Let's ask the principal, how are you open? What are you open to options and helping to protect schools and keeping kids safe? What dynamics are you doing to kind of shift that moving forward? So those are the kind of
Uh,
things I think are really important.
I think the issue with, and I talked to a PR guy, um, and he said, the number one fear by corporations now is they don't want to have a woke moment on a what I consider a goofy podcast show like mine, and something gets out, and it was just a throwaway conversational piece or whatever, taken out of context, can now become a big deal for a company, and that's what a lot of companies and CEOs are afraid of now. That's what he
Well,
told me.
again, it goes back to that fear element.
Yeah.
And if we constantly promote within our companies, our corporations, our establishments, our businesses, our churches, our schools, if we constantly live off of fear, we are never, ever going to move past some of these massive crisis issues in this country. And that's just logic and reason. That's not a left
Yeah.
wing, right wing agenda. The dynamic we've done and tackled, and I wasn't trying to segue off of, what we were discussing, but
That's fine.
in the past 25 years, we've never seen any of these mass shootings decrease.
Right.
Not one. In fact, they're increasing. So it's like anything, right? In life, Einstein's relativity of insanity, right? So if you continue to repeat the same thing over and over again, is
Yeah.
the definition of what? Insanity.
Craziness. Yeah.
So, and I use that word lightly, not directed in a derogatory or negative way, but there's a lot of truth to that in different elements. So as a
Totally.
culture community, we got to change things up. And I commend not only you, but the other podcast hosts and people that have jumped in. They've taken that leap of faith. They've taken a leap of getting out of that fear and finding that success, honing in on that, and knowing this is what our society and our people want to see, because they feel it's a safer place to be, where they can speak the truth,
Sure.
speak logic and reason, not just be told what to say or think or feel, because that's important, I think, to make significant change on any level.
Then that's why you need your own show.
I'm gonna have to take that into consideration. It's a great idea. Thank you.
Well,
you never know. I just might consider that.
It's interesting because I talked to a guy, and I told you I was at an event last night.
Yeah.
And it was I won't mention the channel. It was a local channel in Las Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
and we were just kind of throwing out numbers of what we're and he just hey, so what are your numbers on your show? And I told him, he goes, you have more impressions than my channel. I'm like,
right. That's all. The facts present themselves.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to prove
that shocked me. I was like, what are you talking about?
And congratulations too. You have a great show. You have brilliant guests. You have wonderful ideas.
It's the guest. Yeah.
Well, maybe you a little bit,
No.
just a little bit of credit.
No. I'm assured it's not. My wife tells me on a regular basis.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with you.
No, but it is. You come back to a fresh sense of elements that people just want truth. They want reason. They want logic. They want solution, and they want opportunity on every level. And you're seeing society take a significant twist. You have social media that's blown up. You have podcasts. You have conversational pieces again, and that's people are streaming that. We have streaming services now, so regular cable has gone down, and we have apps on our phone. So people want quick. They want now. They want something that is real, that they can understand, and there's not an agenda. So many times I believe now, and sadly, as I work in the news myself, everything comes with a platform, everything comes with an agenda. And if you're so concerned about getting your agenda out there, you're not caring and saying, I have empathy, I have compassion for the people in the communities, and I care about making a difference, and I want to be there, and I want to see this happen. And that's where you take the podcast like you have. And it's amazing, whether it's fun lifestyle programs and topics to something a little bit more serious, or maybe you have a cancer survivor, to you have somebody that ran 3 marathons. There's just so much out there, so much content that can be covered. And you don't feel afraid. It's just right there. It's real and it's raw.
I think some of it too is, and it goes back to Joe Rogan to a certain extent, is you don't know who I'm going to have on the show next. And I've been told that that's a negative and a positive for my show. So I'm kind of curious to talk to an anchor, a news person, a professional, not a hack like me. But because like I was told, like if I interviewed athletes, then other athletes would watch my show more often. If I only interviewed musicians, then musicians would listen to my show. If I only interviewed business people, you know what I mean? But I like having the broad range, and I use the travel as the connector.
Sure.
So many of all those people travel. So I'm not specific, but I also don't go after the gotcha moments, and I think that's what a lot of my guests figure out or find out, that I'm not trying to get you on some kind of, I'm not trying to get that clickbait moment.
Yeah.
I just want to hear what you got to say and what kind of your story and what's going on.
Well, and a variety of guests from different
Yeah.
backgrounds, from different career fields, highlighting what's your experience like? Where are you at now? Where are you going? What are your plans? Where do you see yourself? And not so much a question answer. It's not a Diane Sawyer or, a Katie Couric or.
I know I need to get more like that though.
Well, you might need a little bit of hair extensions, a little color, you never know.
The wife, you sound like the wife now.
Okay, sorry. Well,
well, hey, for my advanced age, I'm glad to have hair.
No, absolutely. But it's, again, we live in a society where there's just, I can't even, I'm single and I don't have kids and I've never been married, but I couldn't imagine raising kids right now in the society, because and not that I would be opposed to it, but gosh, I mean, there's just so much coming at us from all different directions every day on.
See, the only reason I disagree, because I have two daughters.
Part? You disagree with which part?
No, we had stuff coming at us before, and I agree that my daughters, who are 27 and 28, they were kind of that generation that grew up with phones. Like, we fought tooth and nail to not get them phones for as long as we could. And I think it was like 6th or 7th grade when they were the last ones to get phones in their groups.
Dad, please.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was, and it was their punishment. Like, for me, my punishment growing up was, hey, you're not allowed to go outside anymore. Hey, you're
grounded for 3 hours.
Yeah. I did some bad things. I got grounded for weeks, literally. But growing up, the grounding of them was, give me your phone.
Yeah.
Give me your phone. No, no. They would freak out.
Well, it's like it's attached to their hip. And when I mentioned that, it's not, I love family and I look forward to having a family and getting married, someday of my own too. But it's interesting to see how things have changed for the last 20 years and how far we've come.
I looked at, what was his, not the king of England, but Prince Philip, was that his name? Queen Elizabeth's husband?
Oh, yes, he passed away.
Yeah, he was like in his mid-90s, late 90s.
He lived a fabulous life, long life.
Think about the things he saw. He saw airplanes, TVs, computers. I mean, just go back 100 years in our time and think about what life was like in 1922. Cars were not an everyday thing, dirt roads. You were still on trains. You were still using horses, depending on where you live and all that. No computers, no TVs, no movies.
I think you should have Queen Elizabeth on your show next.
I've put in the request.
I sent my royal request for next week's show. Would be really good.
That's the cool thing. I'll be honest. I've reached out to people I know would say no. You know what I mean? But I've reached out to so many people that I thought would say no, and they said yes. Now I'm like, why not?
Again, because you conquer that fear element. Fear is what holds every single person back from any type of success or movement forward. It just takes consistency and persistency, love, fun, laughter, passion of what you do. And it's unbelievable how you see the growth go. But it's, back to Prince Philip, it's the dynamic of seeing, wow, this person literally saw a wave of transition we won't even live to see. We were born after that. And the fact that, again, from cars living through World War II to the element of, the transition from buggies to cars to telephone.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Computers, iPhones, which now the kids can't live without. I want my iPhone back. It's funny. You go out to a restaurant, and I saw this a couple of weeks ago, and I've seen it more than once, but the whole family was on their cell phones.
Well,
I go, now what's wrong with this picture?
when I travel, that's all I look at now, because that's what they do.
I have to literally, I'm walking the airport, excuse me. I'm dodging people that are just, on their, excuse me, I'm coming through, excuse me, don't mind me. You don't have to look up yet. You know,
That's how
it's
it
funny
is.
because all, you're in your house, and I'm sure you've done this before. Where's my phone? Where has anyone seen my phone? I left my phone. And you're looking under pillows and you're shifting around and you're trying to, where's my phone? You pat, there's this like sense of, oh my gosh, my phone, where's my phone?
You
And
want me to freak you out?
I didn't even have a cell phone 15 years ago. Why am I freaking? How did I do it then? I must have made it somehow. And now, so it's interesting that it's.
Yeah, here, let me freak you out, Jessica. Think about this for a second. I'm going to put you. You need to travel to New York City.
I lived there for 4 years.
Okay. Don't use
Love
your
it.
phone.
Well, somebody will take it before you can even pull
Well,
it
no,
out of
but
you.
I'm saying right where you're at now. Don't use your phone. And how would you do it? How did we get from point A to point B before there were phones and computers?
You just say, excuse me, have you seen, do you know where there's a payphone I can use? I
What?
bet you if you ask that question now, somebody would go, say, what?
Yeah.
Payphones? Girl, we don't have any payphones. Where's your cell phone?
Some people
Or
don't
if you
know.
ask, what if you ask to borrow someone's cell phone?
The younger generation wouldn't know what a payphone is. I'm not joking.
I
Think
think
about
it's
it.
I did that once. I tried in LA. Before I moved to Colorado, I said to a friend, I said, we're on a mission. We have a new project today. Let's find a payphone.
Yeah.
And she looked at me, what? I said, when's the last time you've ever seen a public payphone? Let's find one. So we made it a mission, and we shot a couple little funny videos. We found one it was in, I want to say in between Sherman, it was near the Sherman Oaks Galleria, because we went to take this
Yeah.
Pilates class together. And I go, oh my God, you're right. There's a payphone there. And think about it.
What is it?
Payphones
Yeah.
do not exist anymore anywhere. I mean, maybe you'll find one little lonesome Lone Ranger payphone somewhere, but
And just for all my listeners, if you ever fly into DIA, there are payphones in the baggage claim terminal.
So just take note. Put that in your notes on your cell phone.
I know for a fact.
Your cell phone.
I left my phone in my wife's car. I was charging it up before I got on the plane. I fly to DIA, and I'm like, I don't have my phone with me because I'd left it in the charger in the car. So I'm like, well, how do I call the shuttle company to come pick me up?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go to the payphone at DIA at baggage claim.
You got to grab a quarter.
Call the operator. No, call the operator. I need the phone number for Comfort Inn Suites, Denver Airport,
Yeah.
And then they connected me.
And you feel this, you're like, oh, do you get that feeling of like panic?
Oh, well, yeah. I'm sitting there going, my boss is texting me, and I'm like, hey, man, I see him the next day. I'm like, yeah, I don't have my phone, so I didn't see anything you sent me. He's like, okay. It's like,
and I always tell people it's really important. Memorize a couple of numbers. Whose number? Think about it. There's a pause. Yeah. Memorize number. I don't memorize numbers. Scroll through my iPhone, but case in point, it does come in handy from time to time. Hopefully, less time to time than more often. But
ask a 20-year-old, what number do you call for the operator?
And they'll say, what do you mean?
What operator? Ask them. It's funny. It's like give them a map and ask them to find an address. Yeah.
I don't pull up. Remember before car navigation came up, right?
Yeah.
So you literally had to go to the computer. Oh, and we were so excited. You'd get your computer, you'd punch in MapQuest, and you'd go, and you get the address, and then you print it out, and you pick up that sheet of paper, and you were so happy, like, oh, my destination. I have my address. Yeah. To then car navigation, to Google Maps. Yeah. To find my iPhone, to the satellite. It's just crazy.
And now my phone will say, hey, it's 3 minutes faster if you go up Cahuenga instead of Topanga, And it's like, oh, right. Okay. Yeah. And you go, well, but it's a lot of one-way streets. I don't want to deal with that.
No, it's the technology, we have a transition, of course, as somebody in their 90s would have, but we still, I remember when COVID hit, and the entire, obviously country shut down, the globe. And I asked my dad, it was probably, I want to say the end of 2020. And I said, Dad, when's the last time you've ever seen in your lifetime? My parents are in their mid 70s. And have you ever seen anything this detrimental in your
Yeah.
lifetime? When could you remember? What is there something that you could relate uh,
Or the phone.
comparability to the level of crises? And he said, I was probably a little boy, 7 or 8 years old, when polio came out.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, that age, he doesn't remember very, very specifically,
Yeah.
but, I don't want to go into all the politics of it, but it's just interesting to see
Yeah.
and to hear from some of our elders that,
Well, and back then, because you're talking in the early 50s, mid 50s,
right, right.
you're talking, there was no there wasn't even TVs back then. So the only thing you heard about polio was on the news,
Hmm.
or I mean, on the radio
Or at radio, yeah.
or newspapers. And you didn't buy 5, 10 newspapers. There wasn't a conservative
Um,
newspaper and a liberal newspaper. You bought a newspaper.
no, right. There was just a community public newspaper.
Yeah. So now
State,
I can, depending on how I want to feel about COVID, depends on what website I go to.
right.
It's either
Well, I
getting
feel
better or it's
yeah,
getting worse.
COVID regular today, so I'm feeling COVID regular, so I'm just going to go onto the regular website. Now I'm
Yeah.
feeling really angry COVID, so I can go to this one, and then I'm feeling
Exactly.
just kind of light so
Exactly.
COVID. No, and it's oh, what a
It-
crazy last couple of 2 years, 2.5 years we're
Woo.
going on now,
Yeah.
and nobody would have thought in this lifetime we would end up in where we've gone through. But despite all of the, negativity and the loss and the
Yeah.
sad, the sickness, I truly believe we'll come stronger out as a nation, as a country, and build and take off. We're America. We're strong. We keep growing. We keep fighting through everything. And again, we can't let the fear and the elements of all the doom and gloom take us down. And I think that's the most important thing to, especially when you work, with podcasts and having people on and working on
Yeah.
air and somebody that works in the public eye is, again, the element of compassion for people and the seriousness and the genuine intention. Makes such a tremendous difference, because you never know what's going on in someone's life. So
Never.
a little element of kindness goes a long ways. Really does. Yeah.
Well, on that note, what is the best way for my listeners to follow you and what you have coming up?
What do I have coming up? Well, I know, don't laugh at me. I don't have Twitter. I don't have a Twitter, but I have
I'm not
LinkedIn
gonna
under
laugh at
Jessica McClain and Jessica Von Lynn under Instagram. And I'm also listed on Facebook as well. So I'm in between jobs now, and I'm on to my next news job, hopefully this fall. So I'm on a little news hiatus right now and enjoying life. And I have some travel. Speaking of travel coming up, I'm probably going to make it back to my hometown in California, visit some friends over the 4th of July.
Nice.
And I'll have a couple friends coming out here to visit me. We're going to dive into Royal Gorge, do a little river rafting, and enjoy the Colorado summer. There's beautiful elements to Colorado. I like
It's
it. The
gorgeous.
winter
Yeah.
cold, because shoveling snow is not exactly my favorite hobby.
Exactly.
But it's
That's why I like to visit.
I like skiing. Cold is good for one thing, and that's
That's it.
skiing. That's it. Nothing else. But
Totally agree.
summer. So I have a couple things planned coming up, but I'm
Nice.
in the works of moving on to my next news opportunity and where that takes me. And hopefully I can shine in that team and that element and bring a lot of good to the community where I go next. So I'm thrilled, and I'm really grateful.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you for having me on your show today. What a
Awesome.
pleasure. And I really enjoyed it. It's nice I could have these conversations every day, but I know time is of the essence. So really, really, really nice. Thank you.
That's
So
what happens
fun.
when you get two yappers. I'm with you.
Yeah, no, great conversation. Fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I'm sure we will talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
Got it.